who are slowly trickling in. This is a really exciting event for us. My name is Jim Dahlke. I am the senior editor at Chicago Inno, coming to you live from my kitchen table as we kick off our latest Startups to Watch event, this time virtually, of course. We've got some great startup pitches for you later on in the program today, and my colleague, Catherine Davis, will be joining us later to introduce you to some of them and tell you more about our 21 Startups to Watch in 2021. But we begin today with a conversation that I'm very excited about. Eric Lefkofsky, the CEO and co-founder of Tempest, is here to kick things off with us in a virtual fireside chat. As one of Chicago's most successful tech founders, Eric really needs no introduction. You probably know his companies like Groupon and Echo Global Logistics and his Chicago VC firm Lightbank. And of course, he's currently the CEO of Tempest, his latest venture that's using AI and genomic sequencing to treat cancer patients and other conditions. And fun fact, Tempest was actually one of Chicago Inno's startups to watch way back in 2017, long before it raised $1 billion or so bucks and became Chicago's most valuable tech startup. Eric, first of all, thank you so much for joining us here today. It's great to have you with us.
Happy to be here.
Awesome. Let's start with a brief overview of Tempest for folks who may not be familiar with you guys. Explain a little bit about Tempest's mission and the problems you guys are solving.
Yeah, so Tempest is focused kind of singularly on bringing AI to healthcare, principally by focusing on what we call AI-enabled diagnostic or intelligent diagnostics, which essentially means we want to make all diagnostics in healthcare as smart as they can be to help route every patient to the optimal therapeutic. And so the way we do that is we run a bunch of our own tests. Like in cancer, we run genomic tests. And depression, we run what's called pharmacogenomic tests. For COVID, we run what's called PCR tests. These are all just different kind of laboratory tests that we run to help a doctor answer a question. But then we combine the output of those tests with clinical data to essentially put them in context. And so the idea is that we don't just get a test result, we actually have built technology to make the test results smart so we can contextualize it to like who you are. And the goal is to actually kind of use that data to kind of route you to the optimal therapeutic path. So we want to know what drugs you've taken in the past and how you've responded. And then the idea is, can we use machine learning and AI to kind of make the end result of our test more intelligent to kind of give the doctor a better roadmap as to what therapeutics might actually work for you.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff, and you guys have gotten off to a really fast start since you guys were founded several years ago. But in 2020, I imagine was a year kind of like anything you've ever experienced in your career, right? I'd love to go back maybe to that moment where, you realized at Tempest where COVID was going to present this challenge for businesses broadly. And, what was it like kind of at Tempest in those early days of the pandemic where you were kind of scrambling to get a sense of what was going on?
I mean, look, it was obviously pretty crazy, like it was for almost everybody. You can't really put 2020 into words. I mean, it's just been such a crazy year. But we got somewhat, we were lucky or fortunate that we had built a lab in Chicago and then built out additional capacity in Atlanta. And so we had this kind of highly robotic, highly state-of-the-art infrastructure to run genomic tests at scale. And so, and we were running those tests in cancer, we were running them in depression. And then when COVID hit, we were able to pivot pretty quickly and begin running them as well for infectious disease, in this case, COVID tests. And because the company now we're getting close to 2,000 people, so we have really significant infrastructure, we were able to not just get these tests up and running, but also get to a pretty decent scale. So we built capacity, I think from the time we decided to build out the capacity, I think it was maybe around 45 days or so, and we were actually up and running and able to run about 15,000 tests a day. And so we began helping out the state of Illinois, the Illinois Department of Health, and then we, in our Atlanta lab, we began helping CVS, who was covering some of the hotspot states like Florida and California, Texas, and so on and so forth. And we've been operating ever since, really. It's been pretty amazing. Like our turnaround times are about a day. So we're best in class in as well as turnaround time in terms of error rates and repeat rates and the ability to call COVID patients, predictably. It's just awesome to watch. And most importantly, I think, besides how fast we got up and running, what was really crazy for me to watch is just the dedication of this team. I mean, our lab, we have maybe 400 or 500 people that are kind of in the lab and connected to the lab. And these people didn't miss a single day of work, not during COVID, not during the depths of the pandemic, not during the riots when these cities were, it's like you'd have to spend an hour to figure out what roads to go down to even get to our lab. So it was pretty awesome to see that team rise to the occasion.
What was it that called you guys to kind of shift focus a bit and to do COVID-19 work? You guys were really focused on cancer and then had started to sort of branch out, right? But what was it about, the call to work on COVID-19 that really got you guys to spring into action and kind of focus on this specifically?
Yeah, I mean, generally, when the minute COVID hit, people began. We're in the business of combining vast amounts of phenotypic and molecular data, or clinical data connected to molecular data. And in the case of COVID in particular, even back then, it wasn't whether you were positive or negative, although obviously the testing capacity was pretty low back then. But it's really, what does positive mean? Does positive mean you're going to be asymptomatic and fine? Does positive mean you're going to end up in a hospital, need a ventilator, or ultimately succumb to the disease? Does positive mean that you would respond? Back then, we were talking about hydrochloroquine and remdesivir. Today, we talk about a whole body of other medications like monoclonal antibodies and the like. So what does positive mean? And so early on, when COVID hit, people began calling us saying, you guys need to help us figure out what this all means. And when I say people calling us, it was the federal government. It was the big institutions that we all see on TV all the time. It was various academic medical centers. So we pretty quickly were roped into it. And we decided the only way we could begin to try to answer these questions in infectious disease, in particular SARS-CoV-2 or COVID, is to do the same thing we did in cancer and the same thing we were doing in depression, which is run the test ourselves, collect a bunch of clinical data, and then ultimately try to make the test more intelligent. And so that's the journey that we've been on. And that's why we got into it.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the early wins that you guys have seen in your COVID-19 work? Are there some things you can point to that kind of show, how the work is making an impact?
Well, I think the biggest thing that we all point to, people like us, is just the ability to kind of ramp up and handle some of this capacity so fast. And I think there are labs like ours, and even some of the work that like LabCorp and Quest are doing today, where we've all ramped up enormous capacity quickly. Even the Broad is doing equally impressive work out east. And so there have been a bunch of us that have kind of from ground zero scaled up. And really today, when you look at the capacity that we built, we're testing, give or take, about 1.5 million, 2 million people a day in this country, but we have capacity to test far more. And we could test, with the existing capacity that exists right now, we could run 5 million or more tests a day. So we're not limited by the capacity of the labs. We're limited by how many people come in to be tested and so on and so forth. So I think all of us would kind of, the big testers in the country, of which we're one of them, we do almost 2% of all PCR tests in the US. We would all stand up and say, it's pretty impressive that we got this scale up and running so fast. In terms of the long-term win of how do we make these tests more intelligent, we're very early in that journey. I mean, we've been running these tests for about 6 months, and I think it's going to take us at least another year or so to gather enough clinical data to start to answer some of these big questions as to why certain people respond. And that's just one of the challenges of the pandemic, is it's all so new. None of us really know what this all means, right? I mean, every time we turn around, we're looking at data, but the data is 3 months old or 6 months old or 9 months old. And so it's, in healthcare, that's pretty young.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that's really interesting to me is to kind of look at the trajectory of your career, looking back at your past businesses, from Echo and Mediaocean and Groupon to the point where you're at now. I mean, what was it? Were there takeaways from those businesses that you started that you have used in what you're working at with Tempest, or are these just like completely different ball games?
I mean, they're completely different industries. So, like in this last iteration, I started a company called InnerWorkings was first, which is in the printing industry, then Echo in logistics, then Mediaocean in media, then Groupon, and now Tempest. So I've really started 5 companies since the year, I think 2000 or something. And they're all really different. The industries are totally different. Printing and logistics have nothing to do with healthcare. So you have to kind of unfortunately start over every time and learn the space. And I tend to be, which I think has served me pretty well, I tend to think less about the business and more about the problem. I tend to be fixated on the problem. Like, why doesn't this thing work? Why doesn't it work better? Why isn't it actually doing the thing you want it to do? And so it makes it a little easier to get immersed into these different industries. In terms of lessons, I think for anybody who started several companies, I think you generally try to repeat everything that worked well and avoid everything that didn't. And I make a series of mistakes every time. I'm still making mistakes today. I'll make mistakes, in the next 5 or 10 years. You keep making mistakes, but the idea is to learn quickly and pivot and avoid all the things that don't work, and then repeat all the things that do work. And so I think that's been a big lesson for me. The other lesson I think has served us really well at Tempest is we've gotten very good at identifying talent in the organization and empowering those people with a huge amount of responsibility. And I think we've built an organization that does that really well, and it's helped us grow quickly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I want to talk about one of the things you guys have launched most recently at Tempest, or announced most recently, is the Tempest One. So this sort of new hardware device that you guys have recently launched, essentially, for a lack of a better comparison, right? This Alexa device for doctors. How did that project come to be, and how impactful do you think it can be for doctors ultimately, sort of having this voice-enabled smart device at their disposal?
I think it's going to be game changing. I mean, I hope Tempest is the company that makes it game changing, but the technology will be game changing. I mean, you just, in particular, basically what one is, it's just the physical manifestation of artificial intelligence for healthcare. But it's this idea that, and we built a physical device at Cube, we could have just embedded it into an iPhone or an Android. It would work just as well. But we wanted to give it its own physical space, because what it really, and the breakthrough is, it's really kind of amazing that for the first time ever, we have enough technology amassed, enough data amassed, that in cancer, an oncologist can have a relatively sophisticated conversation with a device, connect to significant amounts of data, and get a series of questions answered that otherwise they would have to spend potentially hours on the computer trying to get answers to. Now, those questions might be, what does this particular mutation mean? What drugs are recommended? What adverse events might be associated with this particular line of therapy? What clinical trials are available, and how, and other details around that. But it's pretty awesome that we finally got to that hurdle. And I think we've got a long way to go with one. I mean, it's the first step in a very long journey, but I think the fact that we are even able to kind of put all that data and intelligence into a device that through voice recognition technology you can interact with is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. And was part of that, from a pain point that you were hearing from doctors who just kind of had their heads buried in their computers for more hours of the day than they should have, and they needed to kind of be more freed up and more flexible? I mean, was that sort of the impetus for it?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly part of it. I mean, doctors are super busy, right? They have a ton going on and don't typically have the time to do the kind of research they would want to do. They're also not always great at doing that research. I mean, it's not easy to do complex healthcare research. Even accessing some of those data sets is very problematic. And even when you access those data sets, often they can be wrong. Like, for example, my clinical trials example, there's a site called trials.gov, which lists all the clinical trials in cancer in the United States. And by most accounts, about 20% of that data is just inaccurate. Wrong phone number, wrong address. The trial isn't open. So it's a very imperfect system. And so just being able to get your hands on clean data rapidly and interact with it is powerful. But when you think about this, if you just extend it into the future, the way you interact with technology is both seamless and you have vast amounts of data at your fingertips. If you want to pick a movie, if you want to go to a restaurant, like you can access huge data sets, you can instantly get through them and instantly get to the right place. And the fact that we give you that technology when you're surfing for like what pizza place you want, but don't give that technology and that same capability to a doctor making a life and death decision is just crazy. And so, Tempest was just literally founded to try to get at that problem and see if we couldn't solve it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'd love to talk a minute about, Tempest's growth overall. How was 2020 to your guys' business? I know you had a couple of big funding rounds last year, 300 million in total. I think you said you're up to about 2,000-ish employees right now. What is the state of Tempest's business? How was 2020 for you guys?
Obviously, even though the pandemic, caused a lot of havoc, we were fortunate in part because we do COVID testing as well as everything else. We're in healthcare. That for us, it was another record year on all metrics, including growth. I think the last couple of quarters of the year we were growing over 200% a year. So really significant growth. And in terms of capital, we've raised the total amount is I think north of $1.05 billion, maybe $1.06 billion or something. So we're getting we have a significant amount of cash on hand, and the business is just well capitalized with an amazing team, and all the different business lines are performing well. Our genomic testing in cancer had record growth. That business almost growing in triple digits. Obviously, our infectious disease business with COVID, even our business in testing depression patients is growing really quick. It's a smaller business for us, but growing really quick. We license data, and that business is great. We match patients to trials, and that has grown really quick. And then we recently launched our newest business line called Algos, where we are able to kind of, we have this very large database, about 30 petabytes of data, grows by a couple petabytes a month now. Rate of growth is accelerating. It's a very large database. And we started to be able to basically launch diagnostics purely that are computational in nature. Like there's no chemistry. We're not like running another test. We're just kind of looking at our data, analyzing our data, and then able to kind of run an algorithm that says, hey, a patient should respond this way, or a patient has this particular characteristic. And so those algorithmic diagnostics we think are going to be long-term really powerful. So across the board, I think the company had a great year, and super proud of the team.
Mm-hmm. And having kind of one foot in the cancer space and then one foot in infectious disease and in other areas as well. How have you seen the pandemic affect maybe cancer care specifically? I think you read stories where fewer people are getting in for screenings, fewer people are maybe getting the care they need on the cancer side because COVID has sort of consumed everyone's focus, and rightfully so. Are you seeing that on your end as well? In terms of less focus being given to maybe on the cancer side of things as COVID kind of takes everybody's focus a bit?
We saw it certainly in March and April. It was kind of really shocking. When the pandemic first hit and we actually went to kind of shelter in place lockdown, we actually saw a pretty significant drop. There was maybe about a month where it was almost a 30% drop in volumes from what we had predicted, which was really kind of terrifying because when we see a 30% drop, we're one of the largest sequencers or genomic profilers of cancer patients in the United States. So when we see that kind of drop, it just means thousands or tens of thousands of people just aren't being sequenced that should be. And it was pretty terrifying there for about a month or two as we saw those kind of drops, but it quickly picked back up. By the time we got into May and April, the levels began to get normalized. And we saw a little bit of that same compression as we got into November, December. I would estimate that maybe it's down to about 10% of patients that aren't being sequenced that should be, which is still below where you want to be, but not nearly as terrifying as where it was almost a third at one point. And the challenge, I think, when we saw those drops in cancer patients being sequenced, the terrifying part is, when people don't go to a doctor to have their heart checked or to deal with a medical condition or to get sequenced that they've got cancer, so on and so forth, you may not see the impact on the healthcare system in the next week or month or even 3 months or 6 months, but likely you're going to see a huge problem a year or two from now, because ultimately it means people who should be being treated aren't being treated, and you have a big problem on the other end. So I think we're glad that at least those levels seem to have normalized, but it was wacky for a while.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. Shifting gears just a little bit, I'm curious what business trends sort of you're seeing as a result of the pandemic, whether it's increased remote work, less business travel. What are some of the long-term takeaways you think that we can expect to hang on to even after the pandemic has passed in terms of how we do business? How is the pandemic sort of changing business from your point of view?
I mean, there's a ton of ways. I mean, I think probably the single biggest is it's likely an accelerant to all the things we knew were going to happen anyway. So e-commerce was gaining momentum; it's gaining more momentum. Food delivery was gaining adoption; it's gained more adoption. More and more content was going online; it's gone online faster, right? So I think it's been a bit of a boom and those accelerants I think are here long term. There's probably a series of other things that have taken off during the pandemic that will likely subside once people can go out. So, I'm not as big on this, like it's a total transformation. I don't think like the offices are gone forever and we're all going to work from home. I'm quite confident as we get into the third and fourth quarter, you'll see, most people returning to work, if not, regularly, certainly semi-regularly. So, but I think it's been an accelerant to those trends that were inevitable. And I think there's some new trends that are here certainly to stay. I mean, the connectivity, remote working, virtual communication is probably, we're all a bit amazed at how efficient some of these things are. It's easier for me, for example, to join this kind of an event virtually than it would be for me to, especially if I was coming from out of town, to come in and lose a day and so on and so forth. So I think there's some changes that are really positive and here to stay for a while. But I'm a big believer that the Titanic moves a lot slower than people think. And once the pandemic is behind us, my guess is we do rebound to some sense of normality where people are flying again and traveling again and going on cruise ships, and it's, going to ball games. And I think we'll get back there. It's probably going to be a little slower than people think because the pandemic's also freaked everybody out for good reason. And that hit to our psyche is going to be harder to unwind. Even once people are vaccinated, I think that it's just that kind of hit to our psyche is going to be a little slower to unwind. So I think it's not like it's going to be 100% to normal, a year from now, it could be 90% to normal or 85, and it might take a year or two more to get that last 10 or 15%. But I think other than some of the virtual stuff that in the online movements, I think it'll likely be back to normal.
Has it changed at all how you guys can think about hiring? I mean, when you're hiring somebody in a lab, they have to be in the lab, obviously. But has there been more remote hiring? Have you hired more remote workers, or is it still kind of like, you're hiring folks who are local to your offices?
It's totally changed my opinion on how efficient people can be remotely. I mean, I would have told you a year ago before the pandemic, like, everyone's got to come to the office. That's life. I don't want any remote people. And now I think, that my opinion is literally 180 degrees. I've seen how efficient people can be remotely. So that part's awesome. We also at Tempest made a decision a while ago. It became apparent to us early on that Tempest had a chance to be very big and very important. And as a company that right now, is the leader in bringing AI to healthcare, it didn't belong. I don't mean this meanly, but it didn't belong to Chicago. It didn't belong to Illinois. At best, it belonged to the country. And so we kind of thought, look, we'll hire about 1,000 people in Chicago, but if we get much bigger than that, we want to have offices all over the place. And so today we have offices in New York and Madison, Wisconsin, and Washington, D.C., and we're opening up an office in Boulder. We have an office in San Francisco. We're opening up an office in Boston. I mean, I would suspect we'll have, offices everywhere, little offices. And I think our whole approach is hire amazingly talented people wherever they are and wherever they want to live, and let them do their best work in whatever the best environment is. And we don't think about geography the way we used to, where it's, all got to be here and all got to be together.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of geography, I mean, you've been a Chicago tech CEO and founder for a long time. I'm curious if you have thoughts on Chicago's desirability as a tech hub compared to some of these other hot cities like Austin or Miami that are kind of cities of the moment right now, right? Is Chicago kind of doing enough to sort of be this place to attract talent as folks may be considering leaving high-priced areas like the Valley or New York or Boston?
No. I mean, no. And it never has, and I don't know if it will. It just in its DNA, it just, it has like, McDonald's and hot dogs and, and like, trucks and rails and it's had a very hard time. Chicago has always had a very hard time embracing technology, embracing risk, embracing people that want to innovate. It just, if you just look at the media, if you just look at the articles, if you just look at the tone and the tenor of our conversation, it's just far too often negative. And I think some of these other areas are more willing to kind of really get behind people who are looking to start tech companies and innovate. And I think they have an advantage. And I think Chicago's an awesome city. And if it could really get its act together and try and find a way to build an environment that was super friendly to people that wanted to start companies, I think it could compete with anybody. But I haven't seen a ton of it in my 20-year tenure, and we'll have to see what happens in the next 20.
So I'll leave you with one last question. What's one thing Chicago could do? One thing the city could do to be a bigger destination for tech talent, to be a better tech city? What's one thing that could happen in Chicago to kind of elevate itself in your mind?
I think a big part of it, it's the DNA, for lack of a pun, because I'm at Tempest, but it's the DNA of the city, right? In other words, like the DNA of Austin or the DNA of Palo Alto is all about encouraging, things like this, companies that come out of things like this, and they do everything they can to encourage that and to promote it. Because it's just super important to those ecosystems. And I think in Chicago, I don't know if it's super important to our ecosystem, right? I think when you look at the news, it's all about the teachers union and Boeing and what's United Airlines doing, and it's big company, it's older industries, it's politics. It's just a different kind of a DNA. And I think Chicago has a really interesting chance with biotech in particular and health tech in particular. It has amazing universities, some of the smartest, best people in the country, this awesome Midwest kind of work ethic. So it has everything you need. It's a crazy great city. Like, it has all the ingredients, but it's going to take the leadership, the people who are public, who kind of can move some of these things, deciding that this is what's important, that investing in the future. It's a little bit like GM, okay, and Tesla. Like, GM recently has got the religion. Now, I don't know when they got the religion, but in the last 2-3 years, they got the religion. And that company now is doing everything they can to be EV, right? They're doing everything they can to go electric. But up until they got the religion, they didn't have it. They were just like a normal auto company. And I don't know how they got the religion, but Chicago needs to get the religion.
Well, what a good point to end on there, Eric. That's all the time we have. Eric, thank you so much for joining us today. It was great to chat. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great. And to Eric's point, I will shamelessly plug Chicago Inno in terms of media, kind of covering what's next in Chicago, companies like Tempest and these other startups to watch, chicagoinno.com, and our Beat newsletter 5 days a week. Definitely the place to check out what's next in Chicago. Now, for the next portion of our event, I'm going to kick it to my colleague, Catherine Davis, who will introduce you all to a handful of the startups on our 21 to watch in 2021. Catherine, take it away.
Thanks, Jim. Hey, everyone. Like Jim said, I'm Catherine Davis, the Associate Editor here at Chicago Inno. Thank you, Jim and Eric, for that fabulous interview. Now we're moving on to the next portion of our event, which is the startup pitches. So every person pitching today is the founder of a Chicago startup that appeared on our 21 startups to watch in 2021 list. But before we get to the pitches, let me explain a little bit about our Startups to Watch program and how we're selecting these companies. So the list is really designed to be a snapshot of really interesting early stage companies that we expect to do big things in the year to come. So whether that's raising big funding rounds, greatly expanding their team, or coming out with new and innovative products and services. These companies are on the list because they've demonstrated some impressive traction by fundraising angel and seed funding, landing spots in coveted accelerator programs, or winning prestigious pitch competitions. And because of the events of this last year, some of the honorees on our list this year even stepped up to help address the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. To help us put together this list every year, we get an insight from Chicago venture capitalists and tech leaders around town. And then me and Jim use our own reporting and knowledge of the industry to narrow it down to the number each year. So tonight we'll be hearing pitches from 5 companies, and each has about 3 minutes to pitch. Time only allowed for a handful of our 21 startups to pitch tonight, but if you want to see all of the companies that made our list this year, head to the link that we put in the chat at the beginning of the event. You can see the full list there, and we'll also be doing a short Q&A after all the pitches. So if you have a question for a specific founder, please put it in the Q&A box provided on the Zoom panel, and we'll get to it at the end. So without further ado, let's get to it. Our first pitch is from Dhruv Shivakumar, the founder and CEO of Cohesion.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here and for the honor of being recognized by Chicago Inno as a 2021 startup to watch. It's hard to be the first to follow the amazing work that Eric's team at Tempest is doing, but I'll try and dispel that there are other great startups doing amazing things in Chicago. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of Cohesion. I 100% agree with Eric as he said that the office is coming back and people will be using commercial real estate again, just like the pre-pandemic times. So we're a spinoff from ESD Global, a Chicago-based mechanical engineering firm. Our clients are award-winning operators in Class A office buildings and large global tenants. We also recently launched in Singapore last July, establishing our APAC presence, and we did that virtually as we were not able to travel due to the pandemic. We closed our Series C round of capital in July of 2020 with Hyde Park Angels leading the round. And because of all the momentum and growth, we're officially launching our Series A round of funding in just a few weeks. Very excited about that one. Most industries have enabled technology solutions, but real estate has been lagging. The industry is being disrupted by this very real pandemic and is now just starting to change, providing ample opportunity for us to embrace change in a legacy industry. The experiences in commercial buildings are turning to touchless capabilities with a focus on safety and wellness for humans, while spaces are being forced to become smarter with holistic data. How many people are utilizing the space? How and when are they utilizing it? Is it safe for me to work in the office? These are all the questions we must ask ourselves as the pandemic is shaping new work norms. But one thing is true, we must be building flexible solutions that will adapt as offices and workplaces change. And we're doing that at Cohesion. By leveraging our patented data-driven technology to create a more responsive and resilient class of buildings and workspaces, we're ultimately leading the way to autonomy. So we're a building experience app that integrates building systems, engages tenants, offers smart controls, and delivers actionable insights for owners, operators, and tenants. Through our cloud-based integrated platform, we offer features such as mobile key cards, elevator call buttons, and amenity bookings, just to name a few. We're able to take an elevator out of service and trigger a service request after that cab has run 20 times. We offer insights to the owners that reflect how many times those elevators were cleaned, providing them an opportunity to share with building tenants that the building is taking all necessary precautions. And meanwhile, we're giving tenants the opportunity to see their building's air quality, and leveraging AI, we can automatically increase air supply to mitigate a pollutant spike so that the building is always optimized. These are just a few use cases of our platform, and also that of a smart building. And the only way to do all of this is to bring human data and systems data together into a digital twin that virtually simulates the operations of a building. Our team is made up of entrepreneurs, real estate experts, and the most innovative product inventors. We currently have 27 employees in the US and 16 developers in India, and are continuing to grow. We also have great support across our impressive board and advisors. While PropTech is getting very crowded, we are the only agnostic, fully connected platform on the market, with the most comprehensive feature set blending intelligence, tenant engagement, digital twin functionality, and property management. The future of buildings is through Cohesion. Will you join our revolution? Please go to cohesionib.com to learn more. And thank you for the time.
Thank you so much, Thru. That was great. Next up, we have Jeff Slipko, the co-founder of NestEgg.
Yeah, thank you so much, Catherine. I'm going to try to share my screen here. It is disabled. So should I just talk through it, Catherine? Is that all right?
Yeah, just go ahead.
Cool. Yep. And so I'm Jeff Slipko. I am the co-founder and CMO for NestEgg. And so I'm here today to talk to you about how we're automating long-term rentals for growth-minded landlords. And so there's 12 million independent landlords today in the US. And pretty much all of them see long-term rentals as their path to financial independence. But the issue is they quickly reach their limit for two reasons. One is there's a lot of financial uncertainty that comes with being a landlord. That comes from missed rent payments, late rent payments, or unexpected maintenance issues. Or also it's operational overhead. So the vast majority of these 12 million independent landlords, they have day jobs. They're trying to build their rental portfolios over the weekends or during the evenings. But as they grow that portfolio, the time demands become more and more, and they eventually just get capped out and reach their limit. So what makes NestEgg unique is that we have built basically landlord management as a service to help these landlords grow. We've built all that on top of some really innovative financial services. So we are a full stack solution, which means that we offer leasing support, management tools, portfolio growth support. And what we've done is we've layered that on top of a marketplace. And so landlord ever needs anything done at their units, they need a contractor, they need a plumber, like a plumber or a handyman, or they need insurance, they can actually buy that from our marketplace seamlessly in our app. And that rests on top of our financial services, which really is what differentiates us from everybody else in our competitor set. So what we are able to do for landlords is really facilitate payments, automate the rental income entirely, and also offer interest-free financing as well for any expenses, which I'm going to talk about more next. Which is financial certainty for all landlords is really what we bring to the table. And so we saw this as our superpower, especially in 2020 during COVID, where what we do, which is really unique, is we actually pay rent to the landlords on the first of every month, guaranteed. That's before the tenants ever make a payment. That means if tenants need more time that month, and so, hey, they want to pay half the rent on the 1st, half on the 15th, no problem. We're paying that first. There's absolutely no more financial uncertainty there in terms of their income. And if any expenses come up anytime, they can actually get those fixed today. And then using NestEgg Pay, which is the very first payment method ever invented for landlords, they can actually defer the cost of any of those expenses for 2, 4, or 6 months interest-free. And then also to cap it off in our marketplace, if they want to reduce their risk even further, they can actually buy insurance against tenant default. So if their tenant does stop paying for any reason, no worries. We'll keep on paying them their full rent on the first of the month of every month until they can get another tenant that moves in. And the second pain point there that I mentioned earlier was the fact that there's operational overhead. And so with NestEgg, what we do is we actually completely automate the operational side. So they can manage about up to 20 of their units in minutes per month. So how we do that is we actually have a 24/7 maintenance help desk that tenants can go to, and they report maintenance issues. And using our proprietary machine learning technology, we can actually take that maintenance issue, diagnose it, and attach a price to it to get it fixed from a marketplace. So that issue goes to the landlord, and all they need to do is click a button and say, yep, NestEgg, send that plumber, get this fixed. And we're going to handle all of the coordination with their tenant. And the landlord just simply gets a bill at the end, and it's done. So there's absolutely no time required by the landlord except for clicking a button to get things fixed. So, we're actually pretty fortunate. 2020 was a very strong year for our company. We grew, we added about 500% more landlords and units to our platform. We facilitated $8.5 million in rent payments, the vast majority of which were actually in their accounts on the first. And we had about a 500% growth in our marketplace, of which 98% of that came in Chicago. So and for 2021, we're really excited to grow faster and go into more markets. But Chicago is where we started, and it's always near and dear to our heart. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Next, we have Brian Fritton, the founder and CEO of Havoc Shield.
Hi there. Thanks, Catherine. And thanks so much to Chicago Inno for the honor and opportunity to be here. My name is Brian Fritton. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Havoc Shield, which is an all-in-one cybersecurity program built specifically for startups and small businesses. You can think of it in operation a little bit like what TurboTax did for tax prep, in that we take the ocean of technical compliance, vendor, and coordination complexity that is the cybersecurity space, and we bake it into a step-by-step action plan that your existing team can execute on. Our company was born out of my own struggles as the guy in the hot seat, sort of responsible for security inside a small venture. When I was the VP of engineering at a firm that hosts political strategy material for several national campaigns, I inherited IT and got put in charge of cybersecurity in front of the 2018 midterm elections. We had to get really serious about the threat of attacks, and we found those same threats are now appearing earlier and more directed against smaller and smaller companies. So we were also struggling to win, large enterprise deals, given the hundreds of security and compliance requirements that were set on us that we didn't have the resources really to get from 0 to 1 on either. And when searching for solutions to solve these problems, we found either jargon-filled compliance frameworks that just gave us more homework to do and not really the tools to actually do it, or we found these top 10 listicle cookie cutter types of blog posts that just said, choose a strong password and you'll be fine. Obviously, those didn't work for us in that past business, and they don't work for companies facing these types of problems today. Our customers often hire us in order to get through those types of dozens or sometimes hundreds of requirements that large businesses have for them before they can win a deal. And they use their Havoc Shield program to differentiate them from their competitors. So as we're helping customers mitigate the financial and reputational impacts of a breach that's going to statistically happen to almost half of all small firms within the next 12 months, we're also helping them actually grow revenue through our program. We provide a tailored plan, self-serve guidance in plain language, and fully integrated tools like vulnerability scans, cyber awareness training, email security, VPNs, and a password manager without having to leave the platform or find and figure it out themselves. So it's also all mapped to those industry compliance regimes behind the scenes, so regulators and large customers are automatically familiar with the output. At the end of the day, our business is really about helping other founders ensure that they're ready for the risks associated with running a company in today's environment, and helping them do it without having to hire a very expensive and hard to find specialized staff. We'd love to give anyone on the call an extended trial to help you build a program, or if you belong to a VC or professional group whose members could benefit from learning a little bit more about what they can do to protect their company and win new customers through security, we're happy to do free tactical workshops as well. I'm personally reachable at brian@havocshield.com. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Brian. And next we have co-founder and CEO of LifeWeb 360, Allie Briggs.
Thanks, Catherine. Hi, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to be here today. I'm Allie, CEO of LifeWeb 360, where we help communities to celebrate a loved one. Because when somebody dies, it can be awkward for their friends and relatives. Think about the last person you know that passed away. You want to say or do something, send a card, a casserole, and then after a few weeks, you go back to life as usual. Meanwhile, the bereaved family, they're in shock. They can't take in that their person has just died, and they can't take in all that love. At LifeWeb, we make it easy for the friends and relatives to share stories, photos, and videos while we have their attention. It's like an extension of the wake. We organize these memories by life theme to add context and meaning. And when the family is ready, they can come back to these memories as a beautiful gift. And we've also identified that support network that we can engage to check in with them right when they really need it. During social distancing, we've been growing as people have turned to LifeWeb to bring their community together when not everyone can come to a funeral. And looking forward, where do you go to remember your loved one when there's no tombstone? Cremations are already more common than burials and will be 80% of all US deaths in 20 years. And for the first time in history, we have literally decades of digital photos of everyone's life. At this moment, we have the opportunity to build Cemetery 2.0, which isn't where the physical remains live, but where the person's spirit and essence can live. And our product is inherently viral. For every LifeWeb created, more LifeWebs are created in the future. Many people visit a given LifeWeb. The whole point is to share it. And eventually these people will have a loss in their own life or know someone who does and use or recommend LifeWeb. Our word of mouth referrals are already proving this out. Our product is also viral across cultures and borders. We have users from over 80 countries and counting. LifeWebs are free to create, and the community can share as many memories as they'd like for 3 months. And then after that, everyone can still see the memories shared, but to continue adding new memories, there's an annual sponsorship fee of $35 that anyone in the community can purchase as a gift. And while we're a consumer business, we also go to market through channel partners. So we're already working with hospice, hospital, and long-term care partners who appreciate the opportunity for their staff to share a memory of a patient with the patient's family. And our entire LifeWeb experience prompts for memory sharing, not condolences, because we're really not a death company, we're a celebrating life company. And so because of this, our product is already being used to honor people who are at the end of their life, and has even been used for milestone birthdays and retirements. We're a women-led team. My co-founder Rochelle and I met at business school at Kellogg, and before that, I worked in management consulting and corporate strategy at places like Oliver Wyman, PepsiCo, and Google. Rochelle comes from a design and architecture background, and we're flanked by an incredibly experienced and passionate team. And we're hiring if you know any full stack developers that can help us in our mission. So far, we've raised a friends and family round and received investment from Google through their Black Founders Fund, and we're raising a pre-seed round this quarter. The things that people remember on LifeWeb are not the big things. They're not their resume bullets that would make it into an obituary. It's the little things, silly stories, how you made people feel. That's what they remember, and that is what LifeWeb creates space for everyone to acknowledge the people that make life worth living. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Allie. And our final pitcher of our event today is Bridget Connolly, the founder and CEO at Luna Bay Booch.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me, Chicago Inno, and this opportunity. Bridget Connolly here, founder and CEO of Luna Bay Hard Kombucha. Luna Bay Hard Kombucha is something that we started in the fall of 2019. We were the first hard kombucha in the market in Chicago, and we really created this category for better for you booze. We are the first hard kombucha to have yerba mate tea. We're vegan, gluten-free, non-GMO, and that is a 6% ABV as well. We really saw this category take off in California years ago, and then we brought it back here because this is my hometown. And we also knew that Chicago is a space that is very wellness focused. And, you know, we launched here in Chicago at the Lululemon store, in the experiential store, which was a great opportunity for us. And we're also the only hard kombucha to be sold in a Lululemon store in the world. We have some exciting collaborations coming up with them this year, so stay tuned for those. But to stay competitive in this space, of course, there's product innovation, and that is something that we will continue to be focusing on this year. We've come out with our new seasonal flavors. We have 12 and 16 ounce. We have a new orange persimmon smash in market, as well as our latest flavor, Luna Bay Light, which we launched this week, actually. And that is at a 4.5% ABV and a lower sugar, zero sugar and lower calorie. And we were the first hard kombucha that Target has brought on in Illinois. So we launched in the Targets here in Illinois last week, and we'll also be launching in Mariano's next week. And we're the first hard kombucha that they've also brought on. The better for you booze category is here to stay, and it's going to continue to grow. So you'll see more of Luna Bay around your stores in Illinois and around the Midwest. We started just with the Illinois market about a year and a half ago, but we have quickly scaled to over 10 states now, and you'll be seeing more markets this year. It's been a great year as far as alcoholic better for you alcohol. And so we are very excited and grateful for that. And we're just really grateful for the support of this Chicago community. We wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for this city and for the support of Luna Bay Hard Kombucha. You can check us out online at lunabaybooch.com and keep looking for us as you see us grow this year.
Thanks so much, Bridget. So that concludes our pitches. Thank you to all of our founders. Those pitches were awesome. And that's now all the time we have for our event today. So thank you so much to everyone for tuning in this afternoon. For more information about Inno, our startups to watch list, and Chicago startup scene in general, head to chicagoinno.com, and there you can sign up for the Beat, which is our daily email newsletter. All right, have a good evening, everyone. See you next time.
Thank you.